Hello and welcome to the Legal Genie podcast with me, Lara Q. Why am I the Legal Genie? Because I bring out the magic in you and help you make your wishes come true. I practiced as a corporate lawyer in London for a number of years before leaving the law to become an entrepreneur and co-founder of a successful designer kitchen business. Upon selling the business 10 years ago and moving to Asia, I moved back into law, but not as a lawyer. Most recently, I was the Asia Pacific Head of Business Development for a leading international law firm. Due to an unexpected life event in 2020, I discovered the power of executive coaching and recently launched Lara Q Associates, a boutique consultancy which enables me to work with fun and inspiring people across the globe. This podcast explores the fascinating world of the legal ecosystem and the people within it. From rainmakers at global elite firms to trainees just starting to get their feet wet. From Queen's Counsel, barristers, in-house counsel and the judiciary to legal tech innovators, pricing specialists, HR managers, business development and marketing professionals, legal headhunters and everyone else who is a mover and shaker in this space. My goal is to help you see your world differently. What insights can you gain from hearing others share their experiences? What action can you take as a result? I hope that you will be inspired and learn a lot from this episode. Please enjoy the conversation. Hello everyone. Today I am in conversation with Lewis McDonald, Global Head of Energy at Herbert Smith Freehills. Hi, Lewis. It's absolutely fantastic of you to join me today on this podcast, and it's a joy to meet you. Thanks so much.
Hi, Lara. That's my pleasure.
So you're based in London, but I can tell from your accent that you're originally an Aussie, and you do have a very international experience. So can you tell me a little bit about your journey in terms of, where you trained and your career so far?
Sure. Well, it actually gets slightly more complicated, perhaps than even you would imagine, Lara, because I was born in Scotland and I left Scotland when I was very young, not even one. My parents moved to New Zealand and I grew up in Dunedin, New Zealand. When I was around 9 years old, we went back to Scotland. Mum and Dad didn't really like it very much back there. It was the dead of winter and they decided to leave. And on the way back to New Zealand, actually, we went via Perth, Australia. Mum and Dad fell in love with it. And so we relocated to Perth. And I was lucky enough to grow up there and went through school and university there, studied environmental science and law at the University of Western Australia, and started with one of the big firms in Australia. Got into energy and natural resources law because I just was so interested in the environment and in all of those sorts of things. And it led me into energy law ultimately. And I got to do a lot of really cool things in that field in Western Australia, which is really one of the key energy export areas in the world. After a few years of that, my wife and I wanted to relocate to Europe. We always had this fascination with Europe, probably because I'm from Scotland and she's originally from Czechoslovakia, as it then was when they left, but Czech Republic now. And we relocated to London. Herbert Smith took me on, had a really great 4 years in London, got to do a secondment to BP for 1 year. So I got to work in-house at BP, which was really cool in their gas, power and renewables team, 15 years ago. So they actually had a team like that all that time ago. And then after 4 years in London, my wife's a scientist and she actually got a fellowship at the University of Hong Kong. She actually studies viruses, pandemics, actually, believe it or not. And I followed her to Hong Kong, and my firm was kind enough to give me an opportunity to have a secondment there. And then we came back to London, but I was showing interest in Asia, apparently. And so our firm was looking to expand in Southeast Asia back in 2008. And I was asked to relocate to Singapore with an opportunity ultimately to have a partnership if things went well. And they did go well. I had 4.5 years in Singapore. We built a really nice Southeast Asian energy practice. I was promoted to partner in 2010. And then I suppose having done that, I was asked to go to Korea and start our business in Korea. That was a tough one. to accept, but ultimately I did, and moved my family. By that stage, I had 2 young children who were born in Singapore, 2 girls, and we moved to Seoul, Korea, and we lived there for 4 years. I built up the business there. It's still pretty good today. Left in 2017, so I got the chance to lead our Asia corporate team, and I was able to move to Tokyo on the back of that. So I had 2 years in Japan. And then ultimately, I've been able to come back to London as the global head of our energy sector. So there's a bit of a journey there. There's quite a few countries. I don't know if you counted them all.
Absolutely.
Maybe 6 or 7. But yeah, I've been quite fortunate actually to have that kind of luxury, if you like, of living in many different parts of the world.
Definitely. I mean, that's a fantastic story. I did suspect with a surname like McDonald's that you might be a Scot originally.
I do have a kilt.
Yeah, fantastic. Yes, me too. My late father was Scottish too, so I'm originally McClellan, and certainly finding your way to Perth, there are a lot of Scots in Perth, so I'm sure your parents were very at home there. But yes, you've got a very interesting journey, and as you know, I'm based in Singapore, so I did see your profile and think that you've got a fantastic connection with Asia, and it interests me to think about establishing all of these different offices, and as a foreigner looking at Asian cultures, what could you tell me about the differences that you noticed between Hong Kong, Singapore, Korea and Tokyo, Japan?
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because we do think of Asia as this kind of concept, but when you really get slightly into the details, you do see that Asia it involves this incredible spectrum of countries, an incredible spectrum of people, maybe with different outlooks on life, different histories, different cultures, different religions, and different socio-economic situation as well. If you compare, even people within a country like Indonesia, and think about the different levels of wealth and poverty and well-being across a country like that. Such an enormous country, so many islands, and so it's such an enormous population. And you get into the details, you realize it's such a rich region in the world with so much variety. Probably nothing compares to it, I would have thought. And I think to have spent time living in different parts of it, and Singapore is also unique in its own way. That it's hard to compare Singapore to any other part of the world. Just the way it's been built up, the way you live there, and the way you can just jump off from Singapore into all these different Southeast Asian countries, on a flight which maybe it's 1 or 2 hours long. It's incredible. And so it's actually very hard to compare them all. But I feel very lucky that I got to witness it, that I got to, spend time in those different places. Yeah, I mean, I guess Korea might have been the most fascinating of it all, just because most people that who haven't been to Korea, they don't really know what to think of it, but just having spent time there and being involved in building a business, on the ground in Korea, I found that to be really fascinating in a really surprising way. Just many aspects of Korean culture and the Korean people it was just a really wonderful experience for me and my family.
Yeah, I can imagine that, being in Asia, you experience a lot of fantastic cuisine. So that's always got to be the number one thing that people in Singapore talk about for sure is, the great food. But I am very, very interested in the lawyer personality and law firm management and things to do with law generally, having been a lawyer myself and then, left law and then come back into business development in law firms and now starting my own consultancy. And so when it came to you said that you became a partner in 2010. What was it at that point that you felt you needed to prove to management to enable you to become a partner at that time?
Yeah, so back in 2010, so I'd relocated from London to Singapore, and I was there as a senior associate, and I was paired with a lateral partner that we'd brought in from a Magic Circle firm in London. So the two of us landed in Singapore in 2008, and our job was to basically start a Southeast Asian energy practice. So basically start a business from scratch on the ground in Singapore. So we had to do that. And for me to become a partner, the business had to be big enough to support 2 partners. And I had a time frame in mind, which was roughly 18 months from when I landed. So in 18 months, we had to demonstrate that we had a business that was big enough to support that sort of the 2 partners and the revenue that goes with that. You could probably roughly figure out what that might have been. I was out there with, a guy who was really supportive and actually bought into my objective. So he had his own objectives in the sense that he had to prove himself as a partner. He was made a partner. The guy's Richard Nelson. He's still in the Singapore market. Lovely bloke. He came over to us from Linklaters and was given that job, and I was supporting him. But we had to build it into a business that was big enough for the 2 of us. And we just did that by really working out, well, what are we good at and what's going on in the market, and how do we connect what we do with the opportunities, and what do we have around the network that might support us with that. And what it led us to was quite a rich sort of seam of work around the fact that, and I should say this was the end of 2008. So I left London in October 2008 when the financial crisis was really biting. There were people walking around outside with cardboard boxes when I left London, not from our firm, but from some of the financial institutions. That was the nature of things. And it was in that context we had to build a business or start the business such that it was going to be big enough to support. Because, to be a partner in a law firm, especially a corporate law firm, you've got to be a good enough lawyer, let's say. But you've also got to have a business that's going to support you and a team. And if it's a 2-partner practice, it needs to be a decent sized business. We adopted maybe an entrepreneurial mindset. And we adopted the old Johnny Walker slogan, which was keep walking. Just keep walking, keep going, no matter what happens, just keep going. Sometimes you go to conferences and you pull out your business card and people would say, it's nice to meet you, Mr. Smith. And I'd say, no, that's the name of the firm. My name is Lewis McDonald. So really brand recognition needed a bit of work. But we just really went at it, and we got you always got to be a bit lucky, but, fortune favors the brave. And the major oil and gas companies started divesting a lot of their assets in order to bring some cash back into their businesses and focus on their core businesses, partly because of the crisis. So companies like BP, British Gas, as they then were, or BG, or Shell, as they now are, started selling off bits and pieces of their businesses around Asia, Southeast Asia in particular. So Richard and I got on a few of those and rode out the kind of downturn. And then when the upturn came, we had built relationships with the counterparties in those transactions, Pertamina and companies like that, PTTEP of Thailand. And then we started acting for those companies. And I started doing a lot of work for the national companies, if you like, of Southeast Asia. And then that somehow led me into being opposite the Koreans, and then ultimately being someone who represented the Koreans and the Japanese and the Chinese, which is what I did for many years actually in Asia. So I guess to sort of bring it back to your question, you've got to build a business. You have to, if you're going to be a partner in a law firm, you have to show that you are either a succession case, i.e. you're taking over someone's business who's leaving, or you're an expansion case, i.e. you are going to contribute to the expansion of the business, because every partner has to contribute something. And the earlier you realize that, the earlier you adopt that mindset, the greater chance I think you have of getting it right. And that might mean that you've got to relocate, or it might mean you have to change what you do, because if there's no space for you, then how is there going to be an opportunity for you? So you've got a big responsibility as an individual, I think, to figure that out and to take the guidance where you can get it to try to help you figure that out.
Absolutely. And, it's very interesting that you mentioned the entrepreneurial mindset, because, when it comes to clients, one of their biggest complaints is that many lawyers do not have this entrepreneurial mindset. They don't have a commercial business mindset. So how is this something that you have been able to develop?
Yeah. Oh, look, I've spent a fair bit of time over the years talking to we call them coaches, but often they're psychologists. And, it helps you to unlock maybe some of the secrets of the human personality around the different characteristics that end up maybe dictating who you are and what you do. I suppose entrepreneurialism is highly related to maybe openness to experience or creativity, as some might put it. So I was probably lucky to be born with a bit of that, and maybe my upbringing allowed some of that to come out, over the years. And so I think a bit of that helps. But if you don't have a strong amount of that, you can compensate for it, I think, by being quite orderly in your thinking, and you can bring out your conscientiousness, which most lawyers have in abundance. Some have too much, and really think about these openings in any given markets. And and I used to play a lot of soccer and or football, as you'd say in England. And in that game, you've got to find a way to run into the space. So you don't run where all the other players are. You run into the space so that you can receive the ball, and you've got to have an awareness of where that is. And I think lawyers, like any people operating in business, which is ultimately what we're doing, got to work out where the space is on the field. Where are the gaps? Where are the areas where something's not being completely exploited, where there's an opportunity, and run into it, and work with your colleagues to help you to do that, and to actually receive their passes, if you like, once you're in the space, so you can actually convert. So I don't know. I think about it a bit like that, and I'm always trying to work out where's the space, and that can be within a given field of endeavor, it can be within a market, it can be within a country, it can be within a region, whatever. And you've got to be prepared to run into the space as well, which means running away from where you are right now into somewhere that maybe you're not so familiar with.
Yes, and so that is one of the challenges, though, isn't it? Because by their very nature, many lawyers are in fact very risk averse, and there's the high levels of skepticism mean that they are less willing to go into uncharted territories, and they are pretty adverse to change. So
I've noticed that.
Yes. So I would say, it's very obvious to me that you have got quite a different mindset and quite a different personality to many lawyers. And you have therefore risen into leadership roles, because generally people who are not afraid to step forward and who are more outgoing obviously enjoy this kind of a role, and I can see from your engagement, etc., that you are somebody with very high EQ. And certainly that's something that many lawyers find rather challenging, being in a brand new environment, setting up a brand new business from scratch. That is not something that many partners actually would be that comfortable doing. So and so super interesting, obviously, that you mentioned having coaching to help you raise your self-awareness, because that's something I'm really, really keen on. I love the idea that many lawyers, once they are aware of their blind spots and they understand their true personality and how they can genuinely overcome these things by focusing on that and understanding what is good for them, like especially with business development, what they're comfortable with. For example, if it is one-to-one, well, just plan one-to-one. If you're not a natural networker, don't force yourself to do that sort of thing. So in terms of your business development, what have you found you could imagine would be effective for people who are perhaps not as outgoing and have such an engaging personality as yourself?
Well, there's one thing I wanted to mention, Lara. I mean, let's face it, people do have different personalities, and people have different strengths and weaknesses. It's so important that people understand their strengths and their weaknesses, and also their passions. And on top of that, where their needs are around them. If you get their strengths, your passions, and you can fulfill needs, then you're into the Japanese concept of Ikigai. And, that's a really powerful concept, something I learned about in Japan. And, it's helping people to align those three things. When they're in that space, they're going to do their best. It's all you can ask for from any person, is they just do their best, whatever the best is. But sometimes people need a little bit of help, not just to work out what their best is, but also to be protected from all those things that are going to stop them from doing their best. And I think one of the roles of leaders within any large organization, but particularly a professional organization and particularly a law firm, is to help people to actually thrive in their environment. I mentioned I studied science. I actually studied zoology, believe it or not. So there are some weird parallels, actually. And then just dosed a bit of psychology as the years have gone by. But for people to really perform, they've got to be in that zone where they feel good and they feel comfortable and they feel motivated. And they're actually, for the most part, focusing on their strengths and their passions and combining those two things. And there's a role for people to help others get into that place and to be protected from the systems that they're in. It's a huge part, actually, of success, I think, as a lawyer, especially once you're getting into the level where you've got to go out and chase business. So bring it back to your BD point. You've got to find some way of doing it that you enjoy and that you're good at. You've got to find an angle, basically, that motivates you. I find that I've got a strong sector focus in my own practice, and I work in a firm that is very sector focused. Yeah, particularly in energy, natural resources, that sort of thing. And that brings in the environment, it brings in infrastructure, it brings in technology. So there's lots of places you can go to within that. It's got disputes, it's got financing, it's got corporates. There's something for everyone, actually, in the sector. But the sector focus, what it brings is a sense of purpose, and I think having a strong sense of purpose is really motivating. I think they say motivation comes from autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Mastery is something lawyers can get to through sheer IQ and conscientiousness. They'll get to mastery. Autonomy, the lucky ones have a bit of autonomy. And I think the good leaders create a sense of autonomy for each individual. But purpose is the thing that I think will really see you through. And I think if you can align what you're doing with a sense of purpose, it might be that you're interested in the environment. It might be that you're interested in alleviating poverty. It might be that you're just interested in being the best tax lawyer the world has ever seen. It doesn't matter, but you've got to have a purpose. And if you have that, I think you'll find the angles that you need to get out there and impress people to the point where they'll give you work. And of course, they've got to trust you, but I think if you've got enough authenticity about you and you've got enough passion, you'll get trust from someone somewhere. And they're the ones that are going to give you the work, whether it's people inside your firm, some of these firms are so big now that your clients are actually the other partners, or whether it's people outside in the world. I think if you've got the sense of passion and you're aligning all your, your strengths and your needs, and you've got your Ikigai going on, you'll win work.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like you are one of the rare lawyers who have been able to achieve, happiness within the legal industry. It is something that is the holy grail. It is, a very tough environment, a very hard, long hours culture with many people who have, low empathy. It's very, very deadline driven. There's a lot of frenetic energy. There are a lot of people who are quite, powerful characters, overwhelming characters, and it's a hierarchical structure. So it is a very, very hard environment. And it's very interesting what you're saying about, autonomy, mastery, purpose. And I know that certainly younger lawyers find it very hard to find that purpose. And certainly, you talk about your passion for energy. And I can imagine, especially with renewable energy and things like that, there's a lot of huge job satisfaction in terms of if you're able to do the financing of a brand new solar energy power plant in Vietnam, and you literally could imagine towns and towns of all these people suddenly with electricity that they never had before. It is absolutely driving and feeds the passion, etc. But let's talk about that tax lawyer. There's a lot of people who are sitting at their desk at home, obviously in lockdown. But how can they find, that passion if they haven't really found it right now? Yeah,
I've interacted a lot with tax lawyers over my career because I do a lot of M&A. Fundamentally, I work in the energy sector, but I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, at heart. I love the cut and thrust of an M&A deal. I just love it. It's really exciting and all that. And the issues that tend to be the last ones to be decided in an M&A deal, they tend to be the tax ones, because they're so hard, they get pushed to the end. And there's an incredible complexity in tax, and you think you get it, but then there's something else that you never heard of before, and you realize that you're never going to get tax if you're not a tax person. But I find that with tax, it's like a series of increasingly more complicated puzzles that you're being asked to solve. And I find that the tax lawyers that I've interacted with, they seem to just love that about it. They love the notion that it's so complicated that only they can solve the puzzles. It's like everyone's been given a Rubik's Cube, but only the tax lawyers can solve it. And I think there's some joy in solving complicated puzzles, especially when you know other people can't solve them. And I imagine a lot of tax lawyers really get their kicks out of that. A lot of the tax lawyers that I know as well, they play music, classical music often. And I know they don't all do that, but I know that if you've got a mind that can crack tax puzzles, I think you've also got a great mind for the piano or the violin or something like that. We've got a little band in London, and one of the tax partners is in my band, and he plays the violin. And we call him the Evader, just as a joke. But I think that there's a lot of joy to be had in being really good at puzzles.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting what you mentioned about the music, actually, because there's theories on especially sort of Mozart and Beethoven's music, isn't there, about, brain development for babies. So there's all that baby Mozart, because it's all about the cells connecting together in the brain and the logic behind it and the resonance of the notes. And talking about
at the end of the day, patterns.
Exactly.
And, you find patterns in things, and that's great. And I think they say that's one thing about getting older, which is one of the good things about getting older, is that you notice more patterns. And I think, lawyers with the brains that they have, they see patterns all over the place. And I think once you really get into a really complicated field of endeavor, and tax is just one example of it, there are many regulatory fields within the law that are super complicated, really complicated. And the layperson, they might be able to understand it, but they might need 20 years to put all the pieces together. When you get to the point where you've invested that time and you're one of the few people on the planet that actually gets it, that's really wonderful. And I think a lot of lawyers have to remember that sometimes, that they've cracked something. I mean, you're basically, as a lawyer, you're one of the people in the world that is vested with that responsibility of actually understanding the system that you're in and protecting it. And we forget that sometimes. We go into corporate law, we go into the commercial world, we get driven against targets and all this, but you've got to step back and think, I'm an officer of the court. I've got a responsibility here to maintain this system that provides this order that we have around us. And people have to stop and remember that sometimes, and remember that they're one of the guardians of this system that we have. That's a really important role in society.
Yeah. And actually, on that subject, that is something that's actually very pronounced here in Singapore. Yeah. And that's particularly because, the government places great emphasis on the rule of law and the fact that we stand as a very small island within Southeast Asia, where it's actually very isolated, because the rule of law is actually not respected, and something that is, available in many other jurisdictions that neighbour Singapore. So it is one of the most important aspects. And certainly there's a huge feeling among the local Singaporean legal fraternity that they are very much, in a noble profession, etc. But the problem with that is that, many of them are hung up on the idea that the unique thing about their firm is the fact that they provide excellent legal services. And, as a business development person, I was always telling them, no, that is a given. Of course you are offering excellent legal services. You're all qualified lawyers, and, if you're a partner in a firm, you've reached a certain standard. So that cannot be your USP. I'm sorry, but that does not count. So here in Asia, for example, what can you tell an aspiring, so you've got, let's say a senior associate or an of counsel, and they're trying to become a partner at Herbert Smith Freehills in Singapore. What is your advice to them?
Yeah. Well, on the technical excellence is a given, comment, because I've seen that was a quote from, I don't know, one of the Magic Circle firms about 10 years ago. And I say, yeah, it's only a given if you've got it. Yeah. So you've still got to be technically excellent in order that it's a given.
Yes.
So you still have to master your craft. You really do. And it should never be taken for granted, because it takes, not only is it only a given if you've got it, it takes a lot of hard work to get it. And it should never be undervalued. And I think that that quote has been used in a way to say, oh, we're not interested in technical excellence because it's a given. Well, yeah, it's a given if you've got it. Get it. It's really important that you have it, because if you don't have it, you'll get found out, actually. But it is a given because a number of your competitors also have it. You know, those that have it, and a number of them that have it. And it's assumed that you've got it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people can't tell whether you have it or not. And so there are some out there pulling wool over eyes around it, but it is really, really important, and it should never be underestimated or undervalued. And it's a noble thing to do to try and get it. So I would encourage all the lawyers out there listening, get it. You'll enjoy yourself so much more if you've mastered your craft. If you haven't mastered it, and it's a really hard job, actually, because, you know, you always feel a bit nervous and anxious about what you're doing. And one of the secrets, I think, to happiness in this profession is really get good at it, you know, and to get good at it, you have to focus, because get good at what? What are we talking about here? I mean, the laws of which country, in which region, in which area. You got to pick an area that you really want to nail, and then just go for it. Even if it's like gas regulation or something, whatever. Or maybe it's the project finance conditions applicable to a solar energy project. Or maybe it's how a tariff works. It doesn't matter. Just pick something and get good at it. And then I guess going back to your point about, developing the business, etc., or advice to people who want to become partners, it's got to be something that the market needs, you know, an area of need. So, for example, at the moment, you know that the energy demands are going to grow across Southeast Asia. I mean, any economist worth their salt who's published a report on it will be projecting certain things. And if you aggregate enough of those reports, you'll find a middle ground, which is, okay, yeah, it's growing and it's cleaning up. You can figure that out pretty quickly. So if you want to attack an area that's going to grow, where you can maybe add some value and contribute, you can figure these things out by reading, I think, economic outlooks. And then you can work out, well, what does it take to really contribute in that area, to be useful and relevant to people who are trying to do that sort of work? Who's trying to do that work? Do I know them? Do I know anyone who knows them? Does my firm know them? Who do we know in that space? Can I get an introduction? You know, building a business plan grounded in reality, based on solid economics, and with some connection to something else your firm does and companies that you have connections with. That's going to give you a shot, because you've got to have some reality to what you're trying to do. It shouldn't just be a complete moonshot. It should be something that, with some degree of effort and application, you know, you could actually achieve. You know, preferably based on something you've already done, or something you're interested in, or something your colleagues are working on. Because you need help, actually, in this world to get anywhere. I think you can't really do that much by yourself. You know, you're part of an ecosystem at the end of the day, and you've all got to help each other. Work out where you can get that help from, and then leverage it, and then just, you know, go for it.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you mentioned before that you've had experience with coaching. What would you say have been the things that you have developed and learned through coaching?
Yeah, that's a good question. I had a really, really good coach. He's a guy based out in Byron Bay, and I had most of my coaching over Skype. I was based in Japan at the time. His name's Dr. Chris, if you're out there, Dr. Chris. He's a clinical psychologist, which was a bonus, because, you know, I didn't actually seek out a clinical psychologist, but that really helps. Most people that speak to clinical psychologists do so because they need treatment or they're sick. But if actually you put a healthy person with a clinical psychologist, it's actually really cool. And more people, I'm surprised sometimes that more people don't do it, because they can help to unlock things, especially if you take your objectives to them. But I was actually working with a coach more to help me unlock performance in others, believe it or not, in order to unlock performance in myself. it's part of my job when I was speaking to the coach was about how can I grow the business and the Asia corporate business. And I figured out with my coach that was going to come down to helping individual partners and others within the group to do better themselves. So I focus a lot on how can I help other people do better. So that's when I started to learn more about concepts like Ikigai, which is about how do you help someone to understand their own strengths and their own passions, and also understand the blockers in the environment they're in. And how do you help people to move more towards their strengths and their passions and actually move away from their weaknesses, be aware of the weaknesses. But the coach always said one thing to me, which I remembered, which was it's easier to raise a strength than it is to raise a weakness. And people tend to enjoy the things they're good at and enjoy the things they're passionate about, and they don't enjoy the stuff they're not good at. But build awareness of that, find a way to manage it, usually with the help of others, and find some way to compensate for it, but actually focus more on what you're good at and try and do more of that and move towards that. And then what around you is stopping you doing that? What around you is stopping you from really doing as good as you can do? Identify it and then work with others to help to unblock those things and remove them, and hopefully you can do that within your own organization, but if you really can't, then really think broadly about where you want to be in the world and be honest with yourself about that. Because sometimes people have to move on in order to achieve some level of happiness, or they have to move countries, or they have to move roles or something. But if you start having those sort of conversations with yourself, coaching is very much about yourself, right? And being helped with things you need to work on, that you need to identify. But if you're starting those conversations with yourself, you've got a chance, I think, of moving towards let's say a happier place.
Yeah, no, that's really powerful. And I love the fact that what you've obviously done in your current position is built a coaching culture,
Yes,
so that you
absolutely.
as a leader, which is exactly what leaders need to do, is to help others be their best. And you've identified that helping them to play to their strengths, to find their passions, and not focus on, the weaknesses. Be good. No. Be extraordinary at certain things. You don't need to be 100% in everything. I mean, so many lawyers are perfectionists, right? And unfortunately perfectionism holds you back. So it's identifying your best points and really going with those and celebrating those, and then, as you say, making changes. So if, for example, you're in a firm where actually your greatest strength isn't, so let's say energy, if you find that you're passionate about energy law, but you're in a firm that is a construction firm or something, concentrating on a completely different area, well, yes, get up and move. Or again, you were mentioning the fact that you should be adventurous and maybe choose other countries to be in, where you can excel, where aspects of your personality and the things that will bring you joy in other ways in your life, because you obviously have a passion for travel, exploring. You mentioned you're an adrenaline junkie, so you can be in countries where you can do whitewater rafting and visiting jungles and all of that kind of thing to satisfy other aspects of your life, and really getting that ikigai, the alignment of all of these things that you mentioned. So it's absolutely brilliant to hear that you have managed to achieve that. I'm passionate about helping lawyers to really find those strengths, understand themselves, get that self-awareness, so that they start to set some goals and get themselves on the path, because too many people are just sitting there not really doing anything and feeling unhappy.
And Lara, just to go back to your point about the perfectionism, people just have to understand that just comes from the hyper conscientiousness that you were born with. And it might have been reinforced by your upbringing over time. Is you've got a high IQ. If you're in the law, you've got a high IQ. Usually you've got high conscientiousness. If you're also highly agreeable, then you're in that sort of danger zone, really, because you'll end up with too much to do, because you want to please everybody as well. And I believe that is the sort of the triad, that is the destructive triad, if you like, of in IQ and personality. But you've got to remember that being a lawyer, delivering legal service, if you like, yes, that has to be to a high standard. Getting the law right is really important, and you should work on being a master of your craft. You should. You really should. Otherwise, it's a harrowing experience. Sleeping is difficult, things like that. But that's you as a lawyer. But you're also in business. If you want to be a partner, or you want to be participating in a business in a way that grows the business, that's different to giving legal service. So perfectionism is a good aspiration when you're giving legal advice. At least to get above the standard you need to be above to be giving an acceptable legal service. But when you're developing a business, it's different. Perfection becomes the enemy of good when you're developing a business, and sometimes good enough is good enough. And sometimes it's not about being absolutely perfect. Sometimes it's about being quick. Because if you think about it, if it's about spotting opportunities, go back to the football analogy. It's one thing to identify the space on the field, but you've got to get there before everyone else does. And that's actually more what it's about than about the perfect way of getting there or the perfect, way of delivering anything. It's about getting there first. So spot it and run. And it's hard for lawyers, I think, because we're so locked into this zone of perfection. Like someone gives you a document and it's 10 pages long. It could be brilliant. It could have the best idea ever written, but if it's got 3 spelling mistakes in it, the lawyer's going to find the 3 spelling mistakes, and they'll miss the point of the whole thing. But you've got to, yes, you have to have that about you, but you've got to occupy in 2 dimensions at the same time. The sort of legal service dimension and the business dimension. And if it doesn't come naturally to you, that's where you have to sort of think about improving the skills. Because if you want to, I think, be successful out there as a partner, you've got to develop a business, and you've got to do things. You might even have to take some risks to do that. I mean, lo and behold, you might have to take some risk, because guess what? Other people are, and you don't really deserve anything for nothing, and you're in a competitive market where people are fighting for resources and fighting for space. So you've got to fight too. And that's different to offering perfect legal advice.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, as you say, many people, I think, they lose sight of the business aspect of the law. And when you achieve partnership, as you say, you are a business owner, and agility, adaptability are actually the order of the game as a business owner. And it is about
some business books. Oh, I was going to say one more thing, Lara, because I don't want this to sound intimidating or anything. People need to help each other as well. I mean, we're all in business. If you're in a partnership, you're in business together.
Yeah.
Different people have different strengths and different weaknesses. Some people can help others with this. Some people can help others to find the space and run at the space. And some people can help others to be defended from the environment within the firm and outside of the firm. And we have to remember that as partners and as lawyers within an organization. It's tough out there, but we can help each other. And when you develop that mindset, you are, again, delivering a bit more of the kind of joy, because nothing beats like an esprit de corps within an organization. And clients love that. Clients can see that when you've got that going on with your team, they're like, I want to be on that team too. I've heard people say that. I want to be on that team too. I want to be in that thing they've got going on. And we've got an ability to really help each other in these organizations. Because you can't expect everyone to be at the same level on this stuff, especially when it comes to the business skills. I mean, that's just unevenly distributed. It's just one of those things, probably in a Pareto distribution. I don't know. But those that are able to do that should be helping those that can't do that, or that can't do it yet. My kids always get told, don't ever say you can't do anything. It's you can't do it yet. And yet is the key word. You will be able to do it, but you just sometimes need to be shown how.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, absolutely. It's all about the teamwork and partnership, and again goes back to understanding everybody's strengths, and then playing to and then putting together a team that has got everybody with those strengths that together as a whole. So it is
stronger.
that.
You go back to older. You probably read the book *Sapiens*, and that's just about how we are as human beings, and we sort of tribal, and we like being in tribes and things like that. But the stronger need to help the rest. That's actually, you don't, just because you're stronger doesn't mean you get to hold that over others. It's not like a competition. You're all in it together. So the stronger help the others. And it might be that they're stronger in one particular thing, probably weaker in something else. But if everyone uses their strengths to help everybody else, then the whole group performs better. I think that's when you're getting somewhere near this elusive concept of happiness that you started with, Lara. It's around that. It's about feeling safe in the environment that you're in and feeling supported by those around you and feeling that you're contributing to the group. If you get to that level, you're probably getting as happy as you can possibly be.
And that's the perfect way to end this podcast interview today. And I love that. I love all that you said about it. And I can hear the passion that you have for, what you believe in, and working as a team and coaching your team members and your colleagues, and really spotting everybody's strengths, letting them play to those strengths, and being that team that everyone wants to be part of. So thank you so much for your time today. And I really hope that some other lawyers have been listening today, and that they will be able to take away some absolutely fantastic nuggets of wisdom. So thanks again, Lewis. Thank you for your time.
That's my pleasure. And Merry Christmas to you and your listeners, Lara.
Thank you.